This episode of Cure the Causes is brought to you by Environware. Hi everyone, this is Christina Rahm and I am with Anita Zucker. And we're doing Cure the Causes under our platform because I chose that because she could have been under the Red Chandelier or the House of Ramis. But I know Anita a little bit. I know her story a lot because of Karen Floyd. And so she's done things all over this world to really help others. And it means a lot to me.
Thank you.
I think for me in life, I haven't had a ton of, I have a great mother and great grandmothers. I say this all the time. I come from a very strong women, right? On both sides. And I'm very thankful for that. But I haven't had a lot of women from a business perspective that have been mentors to me. And that's because there aren't as many women in business. And so I have to say this, when I was a little nervous when I met Anita because Karen had told me she was a teacher. My mother and grandmothers and sister are teachers. And my grandfather was a farmer, but he was also a superintendent of schools, and he went to Vanderbilt. And so I have a huge respect for teachers. And then knowing the story of your husband and what he did, I had a great amount of respect. I just kept thinking, gosh, I wish I could talk to him, because there's not a lot of scientists that are also business women or men. And so it was a blessing for me to be able to meet you. And I didn't expect, and I never will expect anything. And I don't want anything other than knowing you and learning from you. So I just want to tell you thank you.
I'm going to say thank you to you, because that was beautiful. And I'm really excited because I had a very strong mother in my life and a strong sister. And they're both gone now. And that part's really hard. And I lost my husband too. And, you know, when you go through these things, I lost my dad also many, many years ago. It's really hard, especially the ones that have died from cancer.
Yeah.
That really struck me the hardest.
Yeah, it's really hard. I've had cancer, but my grandparents, who I was very close to, had cancer, Alzheimer's. My grandfather had Parkinson's. And I think that's what led me to do what I do. I say this all the time. It was funny because we were talking about kids last night. I probably wasn't the easiest child in our family. My parents didn't really understand. They wanted me going down a traditional path, and I kind of went down a different path. At one point I wanted to be an artist. My mother was like, no. My mom's a musician, and she was like, her degree was in classical piano and classical cello. So she's that kind of musician. But she wanted me to go through science and through either psychology or science, because she felt like I did well in school. And you know how you direct your kids. But I say this all the time, until I got cancer, I used to be a lot of fun. And then that changes you. And then the deaths in your family change you too. But I loved, last night was such a gift to have that much time with you, to be able to talk to you. And every time, Anita, that I meet with you, I learn wisdom. So I want the audience to know this, and I want everyone to know this, because she doesn't brag about herself. And Karen and I talked about this morning. You have such influence all over the world. You have the ability to make changes to this world, to universities where they teach kids, they teach young adults, and there aren't a lot of people that give back like you do, and your mission has been that. So I really want to talk about you. You are one of the most successful women in this country and in this world, actually. And I was sitting there last night and I was thinking, gosh, sitting across a table from one of the most successful, what this world would define, right, as the most successful, really talking to you, you impart upon people how you care and what you want to do for the world. So I really want you to tell the audience what you're doing, what your focus is, and why.
I have a number of things I focus on, but one of the most important things I believe that I focus on is education. That's number one in my book, because if you give someone an education, you give them an opportunity to find success in their own lives. And no one can take their education away unless something happens to them, they get injured or hurt or get sick. And so if we give a person education, then they understand how they can deal with everything that does happen to them. And I want people to know who they can turn to when they need help. And if they're not educated, they don't have that opportunity. And then another area that I care deeply about is healthcare. Because without healthcare, you wouldn't be here. I might not be here. Certainly my mother wouldn't have lived to be 96 years old.
Right.
And, yes, I've lost a lot of family at different ages, including young ages, to cancer, and that's been really difficult. But I always thought my husband would be the one that would figure out the answer to his cancer. I just thought for sure, because he was such a miracle worker, and he was brilliant. And unfortunately, he got brain cancer, and what a terrible thing for someone whose brain was so special throughout his entire life to get a disease that has no cure, and there's still no prospects for a cure. There's a lot of help. There's a lot of lengthening of lives with that cancer, but there's still not a cure.
No.
And I've lost a lot of people now. I never understood that particular type of brain cancer until he got it. I never knew about it. And so I've really become an advocate for areas like that, working to help people. If somebody gets sick, I want them to call me, and I will send them to the right places that I know about and try to help them as much as I possibly can. And that's just something I believe in doing. I try to make a difference. And in my family's world, tikkun olam, 2 Hebrew words. Tikkun olam mean repair of the world. And so by doing acts of tikkun olam, I'm trying to repair the world for others and give them the chance so that their world is a good world. And that's really what I'm trying to do. My family and I are really also into the environment. We care deeply about the environment and making sure that we can all continue. And resilience is a big part of that. Resilience is a big part of the life my mother led, the fact that she survived the Holocaust. She was the most resilient person. She lost 4 siblings and her father during that time. And somehow she came out with her 2 baby brothers, her mother, and her brother's daughter that she carried, that was an infant. So somehow she made it, and I really think the resilience was something that kept her going. And then she was young when my dad died. Once again, resilience had to come out because she had to figure out, how do I do this by myself and raise 3 daughters? And we were at a pretty good place in our lives, thank goodness. But the one thing my parents did was they also made sure we each got an education. And that has been a lifesaver for all of us, the fact that we're educated and the fact that I've had to change my career from what it began as a teacher into a businesswoman. I never dreamt that I would ever have to do that in my life. But it happened. It was shocking to me when my husband was sick, and then we lost him. It was so good to have him for 21 months, and he fought. He fought so hard, and he really did hope that we could find and figure it out. But we couldn't. We did everything in our power, and we went wherever we needed to go in the world. We tried to get there. We had the ability, but I've learned so many lessons by worrying about others and how difficult it is even to buy medication for a person who is living in poverty. And you come up and you have to buy your chemo so you can survive, and 30 pills are $13,000.
Yeah, they can't afford it.
Okay? For me, that was the first when I learned that. I didn't have money at that time in my life, so it was like, I have to come and pay for these pills. I had to call my husband and say, I need your help. You need to tell me how I'm supposed to pay for your medicine. And there were other factors. I'm not going to tell all the factors of why I couldn't. And he told me what to do. I went home and I did it, and I had to get cash. I walked into the pharmacy with a little brown bag with $13,000. I will never forget it
I've
in
never
my
heard
life.
this story. This is so great you're telling this story.
Well, I mean, this is why I have to help people, okay? And why it is so painful to think of so many people who cannot afford the treatments.
It's so hard.
Okay, that can save their lives many times. So many of our cancers do have the ability to be cured. But if you can't buy the medicine, then you can't do it. So that was my first big shock, was going in and finding out. And, you know, I have family that's dealt with illness. My older sister I lost, sadly, also to cancer. It was such a shock. In 2 months, she was gone. But she has a son with cystic fibrosis. He's 51 years old.
Wow,
He is-
that's a miracle. I mean, that's
he
a
is a
blessing.
miracle.
Yeah.
He's a blessing, and he has a wife with MS, and the two of them are absolutely amazing, and they have 2 children. They're their children,
Wow.
and they're beautiful.
And do they have do they have cerebral palsy or any?
No, because
MS?
they went through all the testing along the way
Okay.
and made sure, that they had them checked out genetically to make sure that they would be okay. And so they are 2 amazing young people. And but the thought of what my family went through when my sister's first child died, okay, the second child was born with CF again. And again, that medication was even more expensive.
That medication's very expensive.
It's like $30,000 a month.
Yeah.
Okay, again, for 30 pills. And again, how do people do that? And I don't know how they managed it. Somehow they worked it out. But my brother-in-law did. He was very successful, and he's still alive, and we're still very close. And I'm thrilled that he was able to continue to do everything. We did everything for my sister when she was diagnosed. And they were with me by my side as much as they could be when my husband was sick. And so that means the world, too. When you can have your family with you and let them help you share the burdens that you have, that means a lot.
It means a lot. Some people don't have that.
I know.
Some people don't have family or friends, and I talked about this earlier today. You just have to put yourself in someone else's shoes and understand what they're going through, because a lot of people don't have the advantages. And I believe in traditional medicine. I worked for pharmaceutical and biotech my whole life, and I'm like you. I think because of my family, I was very dedicated to the research, and I believed everybody deserved the right to know every type of option that they had. But unfortunately, when you don't have the money, you don't get all the options. And another thing, and I'm so glad you brought this up, if you don't have the education, then I think one of my missions has been educating people, because if you don't have the education, and I'm just going to say this, some people don't have the money to go to college.
Right.
And I understand that we've made it better in this country where almost everyone can go, but I also understand families where they need to work and they don't have the money to go.
Yeah.
And a lot of times if you're not educated or you don't have the money, you don't get the options, right?
So true, and that's tragic. So another thing that I do, I am chairman of the governing board of a 2-year college, and I really, really, really love that, and the kids are so important, and many of those kids are adults because the average age of our students there is 27.
Wow.
94% of the students that come out of that 2-year college stay in Charleston, in our region, and get jobs.
That's fantastic.
It's great, and that's the key. You want to be able to help them be successful. So that, to me, is the beginning. And now we're really going backwards. We're going into the high schools and trying to get as many of those kids to come and take courses so they can have dual credits. So when they get out, they might be able to go to a 4-year college, for example, for 2 years and be finished, because it will save them money.
Yeah, I did that. I actually took college classes my senior year.
I did the same thing. I left school, actually, my senior year. I skipped it, and I went straight to a 2-year college, and I finished in a year and a half and went straight to my 4-year college from that. So I know exactly what you're saying, but that's what it's all about, trying to figure out how can you be innovative and creative in your work. And this is one of those ways we can help. Our governor has been terrific in helping us fund some of the kinds of work that our state needs. And so our 2-year college system that we have, our college in Charleston is the largest. And we have 17 different majors where they can go for free.
That's wonderful.
Free tuition. And for 2 years, we gave free tuition to everyone. So we just finished that, but we still have 17 programs and options now that students can choose. And they're the ones with the greatest needs and the greatest gaps that exist in terms of the skills gaps that are necessary for the workforce in our community, and also the greatest opportunity to get a job when they finish.
That's wonderful. It was one of the things when we looked at South Carolina, and I think you know this, I was concerned about, was making sure there were enough people in the science and health industry. And that was reassuring to me, your university. Not just that university, though, you also contribute to the medical departments of other universities. And South Carolina, I think South Carolina is so interesting to me. They actually, their economic department I think I do a lot with the environment as well, and
Which is
plants.
great.
And actually, Gabriel, who's in there, we're working on a water project, which is to make sure that food and water are making things purified, additionally. And it's something I really want to join with South Carolina and bring into, because I'm trying to create programs where we can improve the quality of our food. In South Carolina, there's 3 states that have the agricultural department and your economic department that are basically separate but give funding, right, to different things. And
They do.
And they operate, most of them are combined. You guys have a lot of attention on both in your state.
So something else you should think about. You would need to know my son. I know you know my daughter, but you haven't met my oldest son, who is chairman of the board of the South Carolina Aquarium.
Oh, wow.
And they work on resilience and the environment and making sure that the food that we get that comes from the ocean, that the animals in the ocean, if they eat the things that are not
like
good
the
for us.
microplastic.
Yes. And they have had campaigns to stop plastic, and so a lot of plastic bags are not allowed in our city anymore. Okay,
I'm so
in our
glad to
different
hear that.
cities. Oh, yeah. So you would enjoy meeting him. Like
I would.
even straws, we only use paper straws if we give out straws at all. Okay, they're going to be paper. They're not going to be plastic. And we've done a lot of that kind of work in our community, and that is driven at our South Carolina Aquarium. They're very much engaged in that work and resilience as well. And every year they have an environmental banquet, and they pick someone from around the world that is doing incredible work in that field to make a difference to the oceans. Because if we don't watch out for our sea life and our sea animals, we will be impacted, because whatever they eat, and if we eat them, we're going to get it.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. I met with the government and in Monaco, and the royal family. They're hugely involved. I don't know if you know that, in the environment. They are. I actually was on a panel. Ed McMullen was there in the World Economic Forum and spoke with them about the environment and fish and the microplastics. So this is funny. I was in a meeting and someone said, well, there's a conspiracy theory that there's microplastics in fish, and they can go into our bloodstream. And I said, that's not a theory.
it's real.
That's real.
Yes.
And then it hit me, people don't know that even.
I know.
And
I know it because we've been involved with the aquarium before it even opened. My late husband was very involved in it. He was a chair emeritus of the aquarium when he finished, and about 2 years after he passed away, my son became chair of that board, and they changed their bylaws. They've kept him on for about 10 years now, I want to say, at least.
Probably because of what he's doing.
Well, yes, and he really believes in the work, and they have increased their level of education in our community dramatically to be able to teach people. And then sustainability with fish, for example.
Right.
Like we ate fish last night.
Yes.
And making sure that fish is one that's sustainable and not one that eventually will be wiped out because
Right.
people are eating it. So they're very careful about that, and they've gotten restaurants to also sign on and be a member of that as well, and being involved in sustainability of the food that they're serving that comes from the sea.
That's amazing. I have to tell you, it's. Someone said to me, I think I mentioned this last night, you can't save the world, Christina. And I said, I know that. And, not the whole world doesn't want to be saved anyway.
Right.
But it's the little things like that, which are huge things, actually. If we can make changes, because I've always been an advocate for the environment. The land, air, and water, I understand that we've got to protect it. I think a lot of that is my mother, Native American Indian, just my roots there. And then my father as well, just how they taught us about the land and how we needed to protect it. And even I shared with you that my dad hunts, but I never ever, not one time, went hunting with my father where the food wasn't used for either our family or actually the whole town. Like he would take me with him, and he would take the food to different houses where people didn't have food. And he even took me to plant gardens and to help people with things. I love that about my parents. But it was those small things that they taught me, that you guys have taught your kids, that helped me be who I am. So I know I'm not going to change the world, but I'm going to try. And you have left a legacy. I'm being honest with you, with your children too. And legacies take time to build.
They do. They do. I'm still building it, hopefully.
You are still building it. That's what I'm saying. It's time. We talked about, raising kids, and what you go through in your journey in life, and I've had to learn that everyone's journey is so different.
Completely. Each one of us, we're the nice thing, we are individuals.
We are.
And having the chance to become who I am is because my husband, first of all, he let me be who I needed to be. Okay, he didn't stop me from the things I wanted to do, and that was really, really a great thing. And I was very lucky to have somebody like that in my life who let me become who I needed to be, and I think all of those kinds of things added up, and I was able to get strength through things like that. And then, unfortunately, through the loss, you also gain strength. As much as you grieve, he told me what to do. My mother told me what to do. They both told me the things I needed to do. My husband, every night we sat down, I kept a journal, and he gave me instructions of the things that I needed to do with our business. He wanted to make sure that I knew with this one I could do this, with that one I could go that direction. I should think about this type of thing for this business, because we had a conglomerate of businesses as a family. And so it was like really overwhelming to think that here I am, this woman who never in her life dreamt she was going to become a CEO, had to become a CEO, and had to know how to deal
at a hard time in your life.
At a hard time in my life, a time I needed time to grieve as well. And it's almost like you have to grieve while you're going through the loss, okay? Because we had the time together. I had to grieve while we were going through our loss of, the thought that we wouldn't be together after a certain amount of time. So that was really difficult. But I was very lucky because I was surrounded by my family and some very, very close friends who have really helped me in my life. And it's so good. My family didn't live in Charleston, except my mom was there the last 4 years of her life. But when this happened, very close friends who I've been friends with for now well over 45 years, they were there, and they were by my side, and they were there every week. One of them called every week and said, pick your night, come have dinner with us.
That's wonderful.
And it meant a lot.
It means a lot for people to reach out. I think, people don't always know what to do when they're struggling with grief, but when you're a close friend, you've got to figure that out, or family member, and be there. Last night we were talking, and I thought, I had so many questions, and I thought, is this appropriate to ask? Is this not appropriate to ask? And I didn't. But you said something last night that caught my attention. You didn't always have this money.
No.
You guys built this.
We did.
And I want the audience to hear that, because so many times you see a successful family or a family that gains, let me say this, either wealth from a public perspective or a monetary perspective, right, or attention. And sometimes, like my kids are going to have a little bit easier than I did.
Hey, so are mine.
Yeah, and I don't mean that badly, because that's a gift too, so they can take that and share that. But I wanted, if you don't mind, I'd love you to share that story, how you guys worked for what you have.
Sure. So we met through my husband's parents. They were my religious school teachers. And when I was 14, my father-in-law was at my aunt and uncle's house, and they lived down the street, and they said, go change clothes and ask your mom and dad if it's okay if we take you home with us to introduce you to our son. And I'm like, really? I'm like, okay, I'll go and ask. And I did it. I went home with them.
How old were you?
I was 14.
14. That's right, because you're my parents' age.
Yes.
When you guys
met.
met.
And so I met Jerry. And he was 17. I was turning 15 in a week, okay? But I was still 14. And we watched Bonanza. I'll never forget that. But it was really neat to meet, his mom, who had been my teacher, but to see her in a different light, in their home. And so that was really interesting. But both of us came from families who immigrated to America, and they didn't have a lot. Like, my parents came with maybe $200 in their pocket and whatever suitcase they could carry, and that was it. Okay, and so whatever
talk about resilience
we have, yes,
yeah,
we have it because our parents taught us how to work and how important it was to work hard.
What was the main message you feel like they taught you?
Get educated.
Yeah.
Because they didn't get to finish their education. The war, World War II, interrupted their lives. And my mom was probably about 15 or so when that began, and so she never got to finish high school and had no college. and my dad didn't either. Both of them, they just, the middle of everything, they had to stop. And so when they got to America, the one thing they made sure that they did was make sure that their kids had an education, make sure we went to school. I didn't go to kindergarten because they couldn't afford to send me. But I did go, starting in first grade, to public school. I went all the way through in public schools. I went to state universities. So my whole education is done through public schools. And I'm really proud of where I am today. And my husband, basically, same thing, public school. When we got married, we lived in a mobile home because that's what we could afford. And it was an Airstream. So it was interesting looking, but it was in a trailer park, and we built a room onto it. I think we paid $50 for the washer and dryer that we were able to afford. We had a piano because I was taking elementary education. I needed to learn how to play music, and so I had to get a piano at home. We found an inexpensive piano that we had to get rid of when we moved because it finally died. It fell apart. But it worked. It got me through, and it kept me from having to go to the practice places on the campus because I had to have a job. So we were entrepreneurs also. We started businesses when we were in college. Okay,
What kind of businesses?
We had a restaurant, a deli, and we had a record store.
Wow.
So every day.
You two started that on your own.
We did. I don't even know how we did the things that we did. Yes, and I worked 20 hours a week as a teacher's aide because I had to have money.
Yeah.
Okay, because my parents didn't have a lot of money. They gave me so much per month, and that was it, even though I was married at 18. So that's all they could give me. They said, this is all we can do for you. So I had a part-time job, 20 hours a week, working in a school with teachers, and I'm so glad I did that. I loved it. And then I would go to classes, and then we'd meet late in the afternoon at the deli, which we never served the customers because it was only a lunch counter. We were open at lunchtime.
And you guys opened that. You owned that deli.
We did, and we would
That's
go
awesome.
in the afternoon, like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We'd meet, and we would make the food. So I'm cooking corned beefs and pastrami's, and my husband made a mean meatloaf, which was awesome. He was really good at that. I made potato salad. I would take 50-pound bags of potatoes and throw them into this machine that, thank God, helped peel them because I couldn't sit and peel 50 pounds of potatoes myself.
Yeah.
And then we had a little machine that you put the potatoes into, and you just pulled the lever, and it would chop the potatoes, one by one. And then I would cook this 50 pounds of potatoes in these giant pots that I'm carrying, and I wonder why I have a bad back today. Because I did all of that.
You did all of it.
I did all of that.
Were
I
you
made
proud
salads.
of yourself? Like in your heart, did you think, because you did something that your parents wanted you to do.
Absolutely.
I mean, they wanted you to succeed.
They did want us to succeed. I don't know that they wanted us to work as hard as
I'm
we
not
worked.
sure they wanted you to do a deli, but you were an entrepreneur, and I think anytime you take that initiative, like I know I have one of my sons that's an entrepreneur, and I don't expect him to succeed at everything, but I sure am proud of him when he does he's been doing really well, and I'm very proud
that's
of him.
really what entrepreneurship is about. It's taking risks.
It is.
And
It's
hoping that they happen. That's
sometimes.
you too.
Yeah.
You're an entrepreneur yourself. You don't realize it. So you really have shown your kids. And I feel like that's what we did. We showed our kids as well that they could be entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And yes, you don't always succeed. And I always talk to young people. I go in college classes all the time, and I tell them how important it is to have failure every now and then.
It is important. They see
As long
you
as you
now,
learn.
and I think it's important that you bring that up. Like one of the things I try to talk about when I do panels and different things is the failure, because people see the success,
Right.
but they don't understand, and that's why I was asking you the story. And I can tell you, even for like you think, well, I'm sure that's easy for that person because they have money, or people. It's a perception thing, but the truth is, a lot of people have worked very hard.
Yes.
Like my husband and I have worked really hard. It was.
I know you have.
and a lot of people in this company that work with us, and I know you know this. We talked about this. The people you work with are so important.
They are.
And I loved the story about your son, and because my son has done the same thing. Creating a teamwork environment. And you and I are
Always.
showing up, but we can't stay sometimes the whole time because we have to do other work and things like that. Another thing I want to talk about that I don't think women all women understand this, and I don't think even all men do. As a female, when you're a public figure and you're doing philanthropic work and you're also doing business, you have to look okay when you show up. You have to be presentable. And it's a lot of work. So people see someone like you that looks beautiful and she's doing all these things, but it takes a lot of work to do, even the travel, like we were talking about your schedule, with what you do. I really want people to understand at this point in your life, you could take a break and never get on a plane.
I could, but I love
but
what I'm
you're
doing.
not.
No, I love the work that I get to do. But you're right. The other thing I've learned about women, we have to know twice as much as men. And don't ever have fear. So one of my dear friends who just retired, you sat by her the other night.
She was amazing.
Okay, she taught me to be fearless. But you have to be very well educated at the same time. If you are going to have that kind of an attitude, you better make sure you have done your homework.
Right.
And we have to know more than men know. But don't be afraid to speak up either. So always use that fearlessness in you to speak and to show what you bring to the table, because I've many times been the only woman, okay, on boards and at tables, and it's like that's a very tough place to be. And so you want to show them that you belong there. And it's not just about the beauty and how you look. So, yes, you have to look a certain way. But at the same time, you got to show them you have a brain.
You do.
And you know what you're talking about. So they need to listen.
Right, because they won't respect you just because you look good. I want the
sure.
world to know that.
Absolutely,
like,
for
you get
sure.
to a certain level in life, and if you're at that table or on that board, they expect for you to be able to honestly know more than anyone in the room, to respect you. And I'm fine with that, by the way. That doesn't bother me.
I've learned.
That's what I was going to say. There was a
agree.
point that I did, and now I'm like, I don't have anything to. I mean, if it was fake, it would be different. But when you really are bringing that, and I believe when you have the passion, you have the mission, that you do become educated about the topic.
Absolutely. And I've worked really hard to do that in my community. I love the work. I love being involved in economic development. I love being involved at the colleges, at the College of Charleston, sometimes at the Citadel. I speak to MBA kids. I speak to students in the business school about leadership and what it takes. I like to bring them data and information to help them make decisions about their lives. And I just want to help teach them. And so I've been involved with some organizations that have done some great research about what kids should be doing today to educate themselves. And that has been really meaningful to be able to walk into a classroom like that. And I have my invitations already for the next semester, the fall semester, in my same classes that I do every year. But I have to update my data because I want these kids to know that I'm still relevant. And in order to stay relevant, you have to continue to educate yourself. And so that's, education is lifelong. I believe in learning something new every day if I can. And actually last night was great because I learned so much from you. And we really share a passion for the work that we're doing, whether it's through education or whether it's the healthcare and the medical side of things. Okay, I'm not a doctor.
I feel like our passions are aligned, to be honest.
They're very much aligned, and I chair a neuro board and have for, probably about 15 years now.
That's a lot of work.
And but it's been amazing the amount of learning that I've been able to get out of it from the doctors that I know, from all the people involved, and then being a grateful patient and having other people on my board that care and want to be engaged. I want a board that wants to do the work.
Absolutely.
I don't want to be the kind of a board where the leader just has a rubber stamp and just says, oh, this is what we're doing. No. I much prefer, even my board work at Florida, we work as members of our governing board.
Right.
We have assignments and we have committee positions that we have to manage, and we have to come and make reports based on the work that we do. And so I feel so good that I'm still learning, and I'm on the hospital board down there.
But you're also learning and you're helping. And I have to say this, I'm on different boards as well. I don't do very well on a board that we're not doing anything. Because if I'm really honest, I'm like, wait a minute. If I'm on this board but we're not producing anything and we're not doing anything, why are we doing this as a group? So I don't function well with that. So I love what you're saying about how you run your boards and what's important. And I have to say this. So one of the things that's been frustrating in my career is I'm a scientist like your husband. But I think really I'm an educator, if I'm honest, because my family, they were educators, right? So it's like, for my family, there was not an option. We were going to go to school. That was so important. I had 2 grandmothers with master's degrees, and back then that wasn't typical.
Right.
And so it was just what was expected of us. And I think that's always helped me. I don't struggle with school. Some of my kids don't love school. I have 2 that don't love it. For me, it was easy, and I loved learning. I was like you. I just wanted to learn.
Yeah.
But people sometimes think of me as a scientist and not a businesswoman. And the truth is, I've done business kind of like you. I was young when I started businesses. I worked for companies. I juggled things like you did. So I would work for pharmaceutical and biotech. But what a lot of people don't know is I started numerous businesses that went into acquisitions and mergers. I was more behind the scenes. So when I met you, again, you don't know this, but I had been in a meeting and they brought your name up, and they said when her husband died, everyone didn't know what was going to happen, and she excelled and exceeded expectations for all of us. And it was a pretty big meeting, and I was like, gosh, I can't wait to meet her. And you overcame that in South Carolina, and I'm in Tennessee.
That's
and I
really true.
We have a place in
do know
Charleston.
that.
You overcame that, and that is a state. I hope I'm not saying this wrong. It's a male-dominated state.
Absolutely.
Like Pamela Evett is another role model for me. Karen Floyd, because you made people respect you as a businesswoman. And I'm like, how does she do that? I think you just worked really hard. I'd love to know the secrets to that, because I don't always succeed in that, even though I work really hard.
I don't know that there's secrets. I think it's all about attitude and behavior and how you present yourself. And the best part was, first of all, I had a great team. I was extremely lucky that the people that worked with my husband, I had to work to gain their respect so that they would respect me.
Did they already respect you, or did you have to step, because they knew you?
Oh, I had to step up.
I
They
wondered
knew
about
me.
that.
They knew me, but I had to step up. And so they probably didn't necessarily know in the beginning of when my husband got sick why I was showing up more.
Yeah.
I was showing up more because I needed to learn more, and I needed to spend more time with them so they would know me better.
Right.
Okay, and so I really worked on that. But I was really lucky because one of the things that happened in South Carolina, being one of those few women at the table, or only women at the table, I stood up and became the leader. Okay, so I led the Chamber of Commerce that had 3,000 members. I led the board of the United Way. I led capital campaigns. I chaired other boards, okay, and I chaired the Community Foundation board and worked to build that. I'm a life member of that organization, okay, and I still continue to work in those boards that I love, that I've continued. I'm very involved still in our economic development organization and have been since it really began in the 90s. And so I made my way before I had to be the leader. I became a leader.
And so they respected
of that. And so they respected me because they knew I was capable of leading these organizations. And I had to lead a bond referendum. We didn't pass the first time, it failed. But after, we only lost by 1,500 votes, which is really not a lot. No. But after that happened, 5 bond referendums passed for the same issue because they were smaller. But they passed, but we learned lessons. And that's the key. It's what do you learn from what you're doing, and how do you take it to the people. So I also was put in a room with all the bankers after my husband passed away. And it was like, oh my God, I have to sit here and I have to make sure that these people trust me and believe in me. So I have to be able to talk about everything that's going on in this business so they know I really do know what I am doing and know enough about it to be able to be successful. And I think I spent an hour and a half with them that day talking. And thank goodness I knew many of them from the work I had been doing in the community, the ones that I knew from the community. And my husband would occasionally say, come with me, let's go do so-and-so. And I would go on some of the trips with him. That was helpful because at least I'd met some of these people before that he had to deal with regularly.
Did you ever notice any of them, I don't know how to say this, treat you different, like they weren't sure you were going to make it, or they weren't
absolutely. Sure? And I've had them tell me that after that. Oh wow, you shocked
like
us.
I heard,
you shocked us. They said it to my face.
Could you feel that though, like in the room sometimes?
Absolutely.
I have to tell you, I think I have a lot of confidence, but when I feel that, I can feel that sometimes. It just makes me want to be stronger and better and to show everyone.
And you can be. And
Yeah.
that's the best part. You prove it to them,
You can
too.
prove it.
And the sad part is that we have to prove it. Okay, but we've had to.
Yeah.
As women. We've
You
had
have
to
to.
prove
You
it.
can't get, like someone asked me in an interview, basically what the secret was to how I succeeded or what they thought. I don't think I'm successful, but I've worked. And here's what I said: I work really hard, and then I have great people around me, and then I keep working hard.
Yeah.
It doesn't end.
No, and that's one of the keys, the people around you, but also how you relate to that group.
Yeah.
And you're a part of the team,
Yeah.
and they know it.
Right.
And that's what's important. You may not be there every second, but you're there for them when they need you.
Yeah.
And that is really important. And so my work team, they're my family.
Yeah.
Okay? They're part of my family, and they know it. They're my work family, but I feel as close to many of them almost as I do with my own family, and I'm
Absolutely.
going to take care of them when they
Absolutely.
need me. I will be there for them. And we've had to do that for some of them. And I have to say it's made all the difference in the world when they know you really are there for them.
Well, they deserve that.
They do, and
Because-
they are there
yeah.
for me, and they were there when I needed them.
Right.
And so, the best part is that they speak to me, and we talk regularly, and I'll call them and say, have you thought about such and such? And I have to teach them every now and then. So there are things I did teach them, and I brought relationship building to the table. Okay? That was something that they weren't as good at. And that was something I was really good at. And so that's another piece of this leadership thing, is knowing how to relate to the people around you and making sure they know that you're genuine.
Right.
Okay, you're not just faking being their friend, but you are working the system so they know you really care about them too.
Yeah.
And so that's a big part of what I've been able to do, is just get to know people.
Yeah.
And hopefully I do know that I've gained their respect, but they have my respect right back.
Right.
And that's really important too.
It's very important. I've met some of the people you work with, and I've talked to people outside of your office, and I've been to your office, and they respect you a lot, but it's because you work with them. And I think that's very important. I have to be honest, I don't feel right about people working longer hours than me, or doing something that I wouldn't personally do, because I think that I have to work alongside people.
Yes.
I think Pamela Evett, I didn't mean to keep mentioning Pamela, but
No,
I
but I
think
love
she
her
works
too.
really hard. That's one of the things I respect about her. She jumps in and she works.
Yes.
And her story's a little bit similar to yours. I mean, she hasn't had everything given to her.
Right.
She's worked. And I think one of the things that women like you or Karen or Pamela don't talk about is the journey wasn't easy. You did have to prove yourselves. And along the way, there is a lot of heartache.
Absolutely. There's no doubt. And one of the things that I did differently than like my husband did, everything was in his head. I made sure we wrote things down.
Yeah.
Like we have a list of values. We have a list of our mission, and our vision was never written down. So I created a template, and I asked everybody on the team to take the template, and I said, I'm giving you some homework. Here are some textbooks that I really like and find valuable in terms of strategic planning. And because of the work that I had done on all of these different organizations, I learned how to do strategic planning. Yeah. And I loved some of the people I learned from along the way who worked for larger companies, for example, in my community, and I really learned a lot about that. And so we together created the document. It still exists today.
It's important. Those documents, I think, to grow a company or to stabilize it, you have to have those.
100%. And then the values, and that's what I want the kids to understand. When I go out and speak to young people, I want them to know that there are values there. And yes, loyalty is still a value in my opinion in today's
loyalty,
world.
absolutely.
Integrity, honesty, work-life balance, and also having a wellness in our
Absolutely.
work. I want my people to know, what are your numbers? I don't have to know your numbers, but I'm offering you the ability to go have a checkup, okay, and do blood work so you know and you can learn if you're healthy or not, so you can take care of yourself, which means you're going to be able to take care of your family, and then you're going to do a good job at work. Because you're going to be healthy.
You're going to be healthy. I came from an industry where the pharmaceutical biotech industry, health was very important. So I learned at a young age, we were rewarded, and we have implemented this program here. We were rewarded for working out. So I remember
did that
at Pfizer
too for 10 years.
Yeah.
I did it, and now it's kind of fallen apart. But everybody's pretty healthy right now, thank goodness.
And there's different, I mean, honestly, everyone has a different path to health, right?
Yes.
And some of us genetically, not me, but some people genetically, it's easier to be healthy.
Right.
Right? It does take time, though, to concentrate on your body and yourself. But in order for an organization to be healthy, you need each individual to be healthy.
Absolutely. And so I offered a trainer that would come certain times of the day to work out in the office. We have a little gym in our office. We have showers at the office.
Work out here?
So I used to go at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I brought my clothes. I had a shower. My son and I have our offices connect through our bathroom and a conference room. And so if I came early enough, then I had the bathroom to myself. Or if he needed it, he could have it. But I worked out with my trainers there, and then COVID came and disrupted everything. But at the same time, everybody got healthy. And I'm amazed at what everyone has put in terms of time and effort to understand, to get to know. I've done a lot of work with the American Heart Association and the Lung Association, really to help them come in and teach and make sure that my people understand what it takes, because, the number one killer, we talked so much about cancer, really is heart attack and stroke. Those are the top killers.
Well, I mean, and women, I know you know all this, the women, like my grandmother and great-grandmothers lived to be old. They were a lot, I don't say old, they acted young, but I mean, they were in 96, I think 94,
my mom
96,
too.
98 maybe. Yeah, it was because I think they cared about their lives, so they were educated, but they worked out. They ate healthy. But cardiovascular, basically, I walked in college, and my great-grandmother had a stroke and was on the ground. And I was as close to her as my grandmother, because my grandmother had my mother when she was young. And so she helped raise my mom. So I kind of had on that side two grandmothers, and they were both wonderful. But my grandmother had Alzheimer's and also had cardiovascular, also had cancer. In the end, it was time for her to leave this earth and go to another place. But it was really important to me to understand the cardiovascular link. My mother has cardiovascular problems. So like every kind of formulation I work on, for example, I care about that aspect, because a lot of people don't know that. It's a silent killer.
It is a silent killer. My dad had heart problems. I've had one thing, but I have it all under control. And I'm really proud of myself. I am thrilled that, like my numbers are really good. They're the best they've ever been.
That's wonderful.
No matter how old I am, I'm older. But at the same time, everything's gotten better, except for some pieces that have aged in me because it's genetic. Okay, I'm following in my mom's footsteps in certain ways, but it's okay. I'm dealing with those things. Yeah. But the great thing is to know your numbers and to know those about the silent killer and to understand stroke. My mother-in-law had a massive stroke. I don't know how she lived, except that my brother-in-law was a doctor, and he and my sister-in-law were 5 minutes from her, and they got there in time for her to get the shot. They figured out that it wasn't a bleed, that it was a clot, and they were able to give her, I think it's TPA that you give in that type of stroke. And so she was able to get that. Okay?
And she's okay.
You would never know. She's blind today, but she's 96.
Yeah.
Okay? But the stroke didn't cause the issues that she's facing today.
Right.
Okay? Because they knew how to handle it. She had to spend time rehabbing. She had to relearn some things, but she did, because she's also a very smart and well-educated woman. And she's the only one left right now in our family that I have, and this was Jerry's mother.
Oh, that's wonderful that she's alive.
It is.
And I want people to know that listen to this, cardiovascular stress is a huge thing for that, and people don't realize that. We have more and more research scientifically that shows the link between stress and cardiovascular events, but stress and any kind of autoimmune, even the links to cancer and all the different things that happen. And I think that's what's so important about creating a work environment where it's great to work hard. And for me, I don't do well, to be honest, with people. This is I don't know if it's a weakness or a strength. I've never been able to figure it out, but I expect people to work hard because I've worked hard and my parents taught us that. you know?
Well, that's what it is. It's about what you've learned and what
It
you've
is.
known all your life. And
It's all
me
I
too.
know.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to respect someone who's not going to put the time and energy in to make a difference and to get their work done and to care about others. Because if you're getting your work done, you're not impacting somebody else.
Yeah.
Who will otherwise have to pick
Absolutely.
up
If you don't do
what
your
you're not
work,
doing.
then someone else has to pick it up.
Yes.
But I think that, you know, for me, that is loyalty. Like loyalty to a
Absolutely.
company. And I feel like I have loyalty to these companies really because of the people here, if I'm honest.
Absolutely.
Because I think their families are important, like my family is important. So I have to work hard because that's my responsibility. And,
Yes.
and I know you feel that. And I got to tell you, meeting you and getting to know you, you feel that. You
Thank
care
you.
that
I do.
about people. And I love the fact that I think you and I both understanding that stress and well-being and everything in its connection. I do love the fact that I'm a woman because, and I think men are wonderful too. So I always say this,
course.
I love men, I love women. I'm so thankful for the men I work with, and I'm so thankful for the women. We have such an amazing environment.
It's great. And I have both at work, which is
yeah.
great. I love it.
You need both. And I think,
Absolutely. And I have one in my life at home.
yeah, you have a significant
I
other.
do. I do. And I'm really happy to have him in my life.
I'm so happy for you.
It makes a difference
It
to
makes
have a
it-
partner
It does.
and somebody to share things with.
Yeah.
It also helps you to feel differently, I think, and to care about your health. Okay? So I have to care about it. And he has kids, and they're nice kids, and they get along with my kids, which is really nice. So we're doing our best, you know, to have this mixed family now and bring it all together. But actually, they get along.
You deserve that. You deserve
Thank
love.
you.
I think love should always be around us in different ways, and everyone has a different path to that. But I'm so thankful that you have that.
Me too.
I think, you know, I when my grandfather died and my grandmother was alone, that was really what I wanted for her. She actually didn't find that when, you know, she died. We were there every day, so it wasn't that she was not alone. I have a great family, so my grandmother, even when she died, my mom and dad went every day.
That's so great.
Yeah, that's how
so
we were
great.
brought up. So it's
Yes, it's nice.
It's
my mother-in-law
nice.
lives far away from me, but the good news, my daughter just went and spent a weekend with her. And her daughter lives 5 minutes from her. And so she's there, one of her children, because 3 of her 4 children live in that same part of Florida. So they go visit their grandmother all the time, which is great that they're there a lot. And then we have another niece that lives in Detroit. She came down and spent some time with her, too, the same week Andrea. The 2 of them took care of her while my sister-in-law and her whole family went on a trip. So we try to help each other and make sure that she's cared for and knows that she is loved. You know, and I think that's
so important. My daughter, Joy's in the room, and my daughter went with my mother. My mother's 82, went to Joy's parents' house and did art and stayed at their house in Washington. And my daughter told me it was the best trip she's ever been on.
That's
and
great.
that she said, Mom, I honestly think that, I'll make me cry. She said, I honestly think Mimi is my favorite person. So I love, that was one of the things when I connected with you, your love of your family. I have that. And it's being a CEO and being a businesswoman has never taken that away.
Exactly, and it doesn't have to.
No.
And a lot of women don't realize that.
They don't realize it because they think that you have to change that part.
You
And
don't.
last night we talked about our families the whole night.
We did, and the key is, who do you surround yourself with?
It is, yeah.
That's what makes the difference in your life. And, you know, my husband gave me a lot of pointers, and he taught me a lot.
Yeah.
And it helped me to have his thoughts, his ideas, and I'm going to share some of those this week. But that he told me, he said, I want you to have someone in your life.
Yeah.
He said, that's okay with me. Do it. And he says, I mean everything. I want you to have a life. You're young.
You
And he
are
said,
young
I don't
and
want
you're
you to stop
beautiful.
living. And
Yeah.
so all of those things helped. He didn't say it to my children, but he said it to me. I wish they had heard it because one of them was really difficult, but he's come around too.
Yeah.
And it's really nice that the kids know that I'm there for them. Even when they were little, I still had to work because I needed to work. It was just who I am.
I was going to ask that earlier. Did you work when they were little?
I did. I didn't have to in the beginning. I did for one of them, but by the second one, I didn't have to, and I had to, for me, because that's just me. I like work.
Yeah.
But I could take time off because I worked for Jerry,
Yeah.
and by working for him, I knew that if I needed to go on a field trip or drive carpool or do what I could do it.
Right.
and get get all the things done that I needed to do for them. And then I had a good nanny for them at that time in their lives, and she was really great, and they loved her until she passed away this past year. So she was with us over 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and that helped.
I had help too, and I had really good experiences. So, for example, I had au pairs. One of the au pairs we had lived with us for 3 years, and then I sent her to college for
great.
2 years. Actually, 3 au pairs I sent to college that came from other countries. So it was really important to me because they became part of my family, and I would love to have held on to them, but I was the one that encouraged them to get an education because I brought them over here on a work visa, and then I was able to get them student visas.
Which is great.
And it was important because otherwise, if they would have gone back home, they wouldn't have been able in their countries to get the same education.
So that means a lot. And, I helped the woman that worked for us. Oh, my God, we took care of each other.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. They were like family to me.
She was family. She would call after Jerry died, and I didn't need her, then. She would always call to make sure I was okay. And then she died of pancreatic cancer, so that was really difficult.
That's difficult.
And but Jeffrey, every time my youngest son came to visit, he always visited her, no matter what, and took his kids for her to meet them, his
Which
babies.
is so important. I have to. So Duquesne, and who's my oldest son, they had Coco, Corey, and now she runs like 50 nursing homes.
Wow.
And she's a major, she went to Emory. I mean, she was fantastic. But they still talk about her spaghetti. We still see her. And then Duquesne, my oldest, his first nanny, we still talk about once a month that he
that's
had.
great.
I was doing mental health. I was a psychologist back then, and then I worked for NIH. But they were just like family to me. And I really treated them like that because for me, if they were going to be with my children, then I needed to have them part of my family.
Yes.
And I hear people say, well, I never wanted to leave my children. Well, I didn't want to leave my children either, but it was a job that I felt like was important.
Absolutely. I had to do my job, but I also had to be there for my husband at times as he was building, everything for us. There were times I needed to be able to go with him, and she was someone I could trust to stay with my kids. And sometimes my parents would come, or my husband's parents would come, but she had to be a part of it.
Right.
Because they couldn't handle it alone.
Right.
So,
well, my same thing. I would never, people ask me all the time, how did you do this and raise kids? I had an amazing mother who worked, by the way, the whole time I was being raised. Both grandmothers worked.
Mine too.
So in our families, this has been passed down. So I'm like, I want my kids to have children, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to, because the grandmothers helped with either paying for things or coming to stay with us. Like they helped the whole path. I could never have done what I did without my sister and my mother. And that is the truth. They were always there. And even my Aunt Hetty would come and watch my kids. So, but it was the same thing with me. They couldn't really handle everything with my kids alone, so I would integrate my family. And it worked beautifully for me. In fact, I always give a plug to the pharmaceutical biotech industry because of what I did for those companies and because I worked so hard, they helped fund that for me.
That's great.
They really did, and it wasn't a typical thing at those companies. But when you step up at a job, you know how it is. When you step up, you're willing to do those things for people that are willing to really work hard.
Absolutely. And, we have a young man he's just wonderful, and I just adore him. He and his wife just had their first baby. So he got his time off.
How much time did you give him off?
We usually give 3 months now.
Okay.
In my business.
Yeah.
If they want less, I think he may have come back before 3 months, but I know he took his time.
Yeah.
And that we need that. I mean,
Yeah,
I want them to
agree.
have that time. And then again, we have a very flexible schedule in my office. It's very flexible. So as long as they get their jobs done, they can be with their family.
Well, I have to say there's some people that work that they don't even need to come to an office. Like if you ask me, do I need to come to an office to get things done? Not really.
Me either.
I'm motivated to get it done at home. I'm my schedule. I'm sure you're the same way. You have to get things done. You set your schedule. You get it done.
Absolutely.
And I think COVID taught a lot of that, for us to really gravitate towards that. But I'm cognizant, like we have Patrick Moen that's getting ready to have a baby, and he travels all the time. So already when we're looking at my calendar, I'm like, Patrick, you can't go. And the other day he was like, well, she's not going to have a baby until the 3rd or 4th week in October. He wouldn't care if I said this. And I go, well, it may come early. The baby
You need to be around,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because I don't want him to be in another country because this company's in 80 countries. So I don't want Patrick to be in another country or actually another state or city when his baby's born, because
Absolutely.
I know how that feels, right? And it's
Well, I
important
do
to me.
too, actually, because I've went through them. Because when my husband was growing our business, we were all over the world as well.
Yeah.
We're not as global today as we were, but we do have some of our companies that are still just as global. We sell product into almost every country. So
Yeah, I knew that about you
Yeah.
all. So my last question is, how quickly did those companies expand? So the companies that you took over, how long had those been in existence?
Well, you know what the good news was? My husband didn't know he was going to get sick, and he happened to sell some of the businesses.
Wow, that's great.
So we were really lucky that we didn't have some of those. And then others, we only expanded if we realized we needed to expand.
Right.
We always want to know, what are the capital projects you have in mind?
And some
What is the
expansions aren't
plan?
good. Yeah.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So each company has to come with us with a plan at the end of every year
Right.
of where they think they're headed. Okay, so that leadership team has to come, and they have to explain and walk us through and take us through their plan. And that works. That's how we do it. And it works really, really well. And now I really don't have as many manufacturing operations, because during COVID we also had opportunities to sell, and we did. And so we really changed, and it's so perfect because my son is CEO now, and now it's time for Jonathan and his team to design what he wants our company to look like.
What a gift.
Yeah.
You get to hand that over.
I do. And I've enjoyed every minute of that.
I heard your schedule. You're still extremely busy.
No, I'm busy, but the great news is he gets it, and he understands what I love, and he said,
Yeah.
Mom, I want you to have the time to do the things you love.
I love that, because your kids need to think that, right?
And he
And my
does.
I can tell you, my kids are always like, Mom, we want you to relax. We want you to be happy. And I do tell them what I'm doing makes me happy. It's okay. But they worry a little bit. I'm sure your kids
Always,
do too. Yeah.
always, because, especially when you're the only parent left now,
yeah.
it's definitely one where they worry more.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm doing the things I love now. I have my assignments at work. I'm on our leadership team. We sit down regularly to do planning and to make sure we're making good decisions. And so I still have certain things that I can pull if I need to, but I don't need to. The greatest thing is having this young person who's been educated, and he worked with both his dad and with me, and we have a great rapport with each other.
That's
and
amazing.
I'm so
He's
thankful
your
for
oldest,
that.
right?
My oldest,
Yeah.
yes.
What would you say? So last question. They stand up when
I can see.
they're standing up. Christina, it's time to go. What is your biggest success? What's your biggest failure, and what's your biggest success?
So I would say my biggest success is when my husband passed away. He told me he would trust me to make certain decisions. And so I made this very, very large decision almost immediately, and I decided to sell a very large business, and that was the Hudson Bay Company.
Which was a huge business.
A huge business. And I had a person who wanted to buy it. And so I told my team, okay, let's get to work. We have till July. We gave them till July of 2008.
What month were you in?
And that happened the end of April in 2008.
That was pretty quick.
But that person was on the board. So
Okay,
it's
'cause
not like
acquisitions
they
and
didn't
mergers
have
are- yeah.
knowledge of the company. They had
Okay.
knowledge, they had data, they had a lot. They wanted more. We gave them whatever we could give them. We closed, I think it was the second week of July of 2008, and that week the stock market tanked. Okay? And it reminded me of some things we've been going through recently, but it was like the best decision I ever made in my life. And I had a professor once ask me what were my challenges that I had to deal with, things like that. And then the success was the fact that I sold that company. I had cash.
Oh, yeah.
I got money at a time that people were really struggling.
Absolutely.
Okay? And that banks were like,
And they're tightening
freezing
up.
and
Oh, yeah.
tightening up the way they did business. And so I was in a really good place for somebody who didn't have a clue
Yeah.
of what you were going to be doing along the way, but it worked out really, really well that we did that, and that it was my decision to do it, and my team was able to make it happen with the other people. And then do I have challenges? I have lots of challenges. But Did I make mistakes along the way? Absolutely. If you don't make mistakes, you don't learn.
You don't. And that's what I want women to, I want women and men to hear that, because they think, like I said, they see you and it wasn't easy and you did make mistakes, but you overcame those.
Absolutely. But I mean, the key is we always would pull back together, and I had this team so I could grab them and say, we've got to huddle. We got to figure this out. We need to make change in this, or we need to make change in that. And we did that. Those are the kind of things we knew we had to do. We had to make really tough decisions every now and then. But because we had the strategic plan and because we set priorities every year, we could review to see if we were achieving what we said we were going to do.
Yeah.
And that helped to have a plan.
It helps to have a plan, and even with the plans, like our company has gone, your revenue goes up and down, right? And I know that because I've been a CEO and I've run different companies, so I've seen it my whole life. It doesn't make me nervous, if I'm honest, because I've gone through the storms. I understand them,
so I know what you're saying, and you're right.
It does, and then but I got to tell you, the teams. Like I had someone ask me in an interview, who do you choose to be part of your inner circle? Who do you be charged to be part of your team? If there's an executive or a person I'm working with that's negative and doesn't believe a company can overcome an obstacle, they're not a member of a team anymore, to be honest with everyone.
And I've been through that too.
I've been through that too. I mean, if they really are like, everything's negative, nothing's going to succeed, that's not, they need to go somewhere else, because a true team is going to go through, just like a marriage or being a parent, you're going to go through good and bad. And hopefully you strategically planned enough financially, economically, from an operations perspective, so you can get through anything. Right?
Yes,
that's your goal, and that's why strategic planning is so important.
It is.
I love my husband. He is more of like gut instinct, and he's a true entrepreneur. Clay, he's just going to make the decision. I'm a strategic planner, and I think both are needed, right, in an entrepreneurial world.
I needed the organization of the plan.
I do too. I need the plan,
and I need that to help me operate.
Yeah.
And help me work with the team that I have, and have such a good team. But I went through that where I had to. Eventually, one of the people that I had to have a talk, but I always bring somebody else in to have the talk, and he got fixed. He got repaired, because all he would ever say, well, Jerry did it this way. Well, Jerry did it that way.
Oh, that wouldn't
and
work very well with me.
I can't go there. I looked at him and I said, Jerry's never coming back.
Yeah.
I loved my husband dearly, but he's not going to be here.
Let's face it, he's not running the company.
And you either need to join me or you need to leave.
Yeah.
And so I said, you have 2 weeks to decide. He came back and hugged me and kissed me and said, I'm in.
That's wonderful.
And he became great, and he's retired now, which is even better. But I also had to ask someone to leave.
Yeah.
So, you have to make sure you have that right team.
Yeah. We have a really good team. I'm very blessed. But you're right. Sometimes it isn't a fit. But usually if you work through it and if you have honesty and integrity, it works out. And part of that is having some understanding, again, of other people.
Absolutely.
And you've done that. Like I heard you yesterday talking about it. I want to someday have you on again. I can't wait to hear your talk. I did know the questions that Karen was going to ask you.
I don't know what they are. So.
Well, I think it's about your husband. I was trying to stay away from it because I know you guys they're going to film tomorrow.
We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Or the next day.
But I also remember the first time I met you, and you did share with me some of the things your husband told you was important. That was important, and he seems like a very, very wise, good man.
And I'm thankful he handed me a sheet of paper with these things written down.
Yeah.
Okay. And now it was rare that he wrote things like that down, and I was so happy because I use it all the time.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Well, everybody, if you don't know Anita Zucker, you can look her up because she's done a lot. But from a personal perspective, her heart and her mission for the world is so important. And our world is not just the United States, even though the United States is so important. It's other countries and other places. And I love the fact that you are an advocate.
Thank you.
Like I still remember the conversation. I think it was my second conversation with you. I know I'm supposed to end this. Sorry. Second conversation. And you brought up you're trying to pass a bill in South Carolina.
I'm still trying to pass that bill.
Let me just tell you, I got out in the car with Karen Floyd, and I said, what do I need to do to help her pass this bill? I know I'm not in South Carolina, but this is so important, and I don't understand why this hasn't been passed in South Carolina.
Well, we passed a portion that is helpful. Okay. One portion that is very helpful is passed. But the other portion, we're going to all start over again this year, and we're not going to give up until we get it passed. So we will get it done.
Yeah,
we will. It just takes time, and the key is don't give up.
The key is not,
So,
is not to
Christina,
give up.
thank you, because you're amazing, and I am so thrilled that we are now friends and that we've gotten to know each other and that we can have this kind of a conversation.
Thank you. We had a different conversation last night that I loved, and Karen said, "You're so blessed that you got that time with Anita," and I said, "I know I am."
Thank
you,
you.
Anita.
I'm blessed to have this time with you.